on, everybody? This is episode fucking 7 of Pineapples with Pam. We are your hosts, Pat.
I'm Andrea.
And I'm Mike, and this week we are traveling with our towels to see Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Hang on, we're hitching a ride.
It was chosen by our resident Mike. Mike, tell us a little bit about the movie, Mike.
You know, in our last preview, I always, of course, kind of maybe, especially when I do the picks, I usually have been picking ones I'm familiar with. And I think I said last week that this is my favorite movie of all time. It technically is like tied for first now with Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? But this has been for, well over 15 years, my personal favorite go-to movie of all time. I would have it on my tablet and whatever, just ready to watch, downloaded, no matter where I was. And I've easily watched it the most times out of anything. And it's really just more because of what it means to me. I'm a huge fan of the book series. So as a quick summary, the movie The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is based off of the book and book series. The first book has the same name, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then there's 4 other books that follow afterwards. And that's important because if you were to read the book series and be familiar with the movie actually touches on things that take place in the later books. And whether or not you're a purist and you're like, oh, it doesn't follow the exact dialogue of the original text, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then, it might not, don't worry. Douglas Adams wrote the script. So all major stuff was his decision before he passed away. Either way, the summary is that it follows Arthur Dent, who is a human, who essentially gets swept up in a hitchhiking adventure across the galaxy after our home planet Earth is destroyed. And it is a comedy movie, very British, dry comedy movie. On his adventures, it's just wacky stuff happening. There's like a love interest. They go on adventures across the galaxy. It's actually pretty straightforward when I think about it, when you think about like the story arc. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He gets entangled in galactic shenanigans based off of association, actually, right? When I really think about it. Pretty much he gets just like by association gets swept up into a bunch of shenanigans. And then the resolution of that shenanigans allows him to start a new life in his decision by the end of the movie. Right? Was that a fair summary?
That's a fair summary. The themes are there's a lot of like existential kind of what's my place in the universe? What's the point of all this type stuff? So it has some like good philosophical stuff presented in like a really funny way.
Yeah, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, which is absolutely beautiful, even though it's so existential.
In case this was a fun fact for you, I guess maybe I'll just point this out. The book came out in 1979.
There was a radio show before that.
Oh, yes, that was also one. Yeah, I didn't want to necessarily step onto your trivia, but I just wanted to point out how old the book was, because when you think about the kind of humor that's in it, it's a bit of a timeless humor in a lot of ways. I think it aged well overall. You know what I'm saying?
I agreed.
So as far as trivia goes, like what did you have for the trivia?
Let me see what I have here.
Andrea opens up her binder full of facts. She's like,
well, I honestly imagine while she pulls it up, it like has that kind of tone. I just imagine her putting on librarian glasses. You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't know why.
Librarian for a time. That was one of my favoriteest jobs. Okay, so you guys know all about the number 42. A little extra thought on that like moment and them talking about the answer of everything being number 42 happens at 42 minutes into the movie.
Oh, that's actually juicy as hell.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that is super juicy. I somehow didn't know that. Listeners, I was actually telling Andre, I'm like, don't be surprised if I already know the trivia. I love this fucking movie. Literally the first fucking one she drops, I'm like, all right, game on. I actually didn't know that. That's fucking awesome.
Who do you think was considered for the roles previous? Do you guys know?
Before Martin Freeman, like who was being considered for Arthur Dent?
Yeah, or Zaphod. You can answer it for either of those.
I don't know, but I am very interested to hear because I think that they were cast so perfectly.
Okay, Zaphod, Bill Murray, Robert Downey Jr., Will Ferrell.
Oh my God, Bill Murray as Zaphod would have been insane.
But after Sam Rockwell's Garth Jennings, the director, immediately chose him. For Ford, they also considered Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd for Ford.
I remember Bill Murray being considered for Ford. He would have been an amazing cast in terms of what Ford actually looks like, technically, right,
Yeah.
in the book. I would say that I will never be happier than having Yasin Bey, formerly Mos Def, as, Ford. He nails it in this part, and he is easily my, one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character in the movie.
Yeah.
Period.
So, extra tidbit about Sam Rockwell. Do you know what he based his portrayal of Zaphod off of?
I don't actually.
Bill Clinton, Elvis Presley, and Vince Vaughn.
Dude, what?
That's amazing.
We're going to have to spend some time talking about Sam Rockwell. I think he's one of the most underrated actors out there.
Oh, full-heartedly. Yeah. For Zaphod, I would not have picked anyone else except for Sam Rockwell, assuming that he auditioned anywhere near the role that, like, the way that he portrayed his character in the movie. And I'm sure Garth Jennings is probably familiar with the book. I'm not sure of how much he was vested into it, right, kind of thing. I was just, very satisfied with the casting overall, honestly, everybody. Yes. All the casting was spectacular, and it's an all-star cast, in my opinion.
Oh, agreed. Absolutely. So many.
You got Bill Nighy in there.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yes. What the hell? What was his name?
Slarty Bartfast.
Yes.
Slarty Bartfast.
Do you know what the connection between this movie and Apple, the Macintosh computer?
I feel like I'm going to remember this answer when you say it, because little factoid I feel like sounds familiar, but I can't quite remember. And I think it has something to do with what he was writing on at the time.
It's a link between the movie or the book?
I guess you could say both, kind of, in a way.
Okay.
Are you lost?
I'm lost.
Let me explain. In addition to the Mac logo being visible on the side of Deep Thought, Douglas Adams owned the first 2 Macintosh computers delivered to the United Kingdom.
What?
And Stephen Fry owned the 3rd.
Oh.
They were both big advocates of the Mac. And Adams and Stephen Fry were close friends.
And Steve Jobs was like, yeah, totally. You can have the Apple logo in your movie.
I didn't go that far into it, but I guess it was allowed because it was there.
But that is super awesome. I actually didn't know that. That's a nice nerdy factoid.
The fancy dress party contains several references to Douglas Adams' 40th birthday party.
Yeah, I knew that one. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the movies and books are based off of real life experiences. He was very much that kind throughout this. So, like, a lot of real life shenanigans or like life experiences. The towel comes from that. The numbers and 42 is involved with it. In terms of it being pointless, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The number 42 actually is completely meaningless.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
He's just like, no, I needed a good punchline. 42 just sounded phonetically fantastic. He was sitting there in the park. He said, that'll do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of shit. But a lot of, his real life experiences did impact his work here. If I recall correctly, this was his breakout book. He was very poor while writing this book. So the movie then being based off the book so heavily in him writing the script, it was very similar in that regard.
The religious leader Hamakavula, he was created especially for this movie by Douglas Adams. Previous iterations of the story, Adams wanted to create him for this movie specifically. I didn't see anything that said if he did it because of Malkovich in particular, or if he just wanted to add an extra character in Malkovich.
No, he didn't have any casting involvement, like, really at all, from what I'm aware, unless he wrote notes, because he died before this even got greenlit.
See, that's how much information there is on this movie. I didn't even know that.
He had, like, if I recall correctly, it was a kind of like a random heart attack. He was not ill, but he died of a heart attack. He had like a few drafts of a script, right, for the movie, including the changes that people might not be aware of. Listeners, if you aren't aware, the gun at the end is intentional. It's not just like movie bullshit made up, right? That's an idea that he had been playing around with. It's in the original concepts. So it's like any of the changes that he had made, he had already made in this time period as he was attempting to make a draft of a script for a movie He had tried pitching the movie a bunch to studios, but, it had already been written as a serial piece. To get to Magrathea usually took, even by show standards, a couple to a few hours. So making that into a movie and having that be the main point of the adventure and blah, 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 you know what I mean? Like, it kind of, pacing was the problem, which is where a lot of the changes had to be made. But the majority of the major influences in the stuff that some people might not be aware of, at least, but like the majority of it is actually Adam's work. If it's not change, I mean, like, assuming that the changes might throw people off who are purists. I love this movie. Okay?
So you guys brought up Slarty Bartfast. I knew I had a little factoid about him. Douglas Adams, he wanted the name of the character Slarty Bartfast to sound extremely rude, but still passed the BBC's rules on what could be broadcast. And he started it off with farty fuck balls.
Farty fuck balls.
They were like, nah, dude.
My favorite thing about that, whenever I looked up stuff about Douglas Adams, like, he's just so humorously British. And like, the way that I feel like I remember him saying about that piece is he goes, I wanted something that sounded rude, but wasn't too much or too close or not entirely closely inoffensive. You know what I mean? I'm like, what the fuck are you saying? You know what I mean?
Like, definitely was successful because I remember reacting to that name when I first heard it.
All right, let's jump into the shenanigans. Since I obviously geek out about this movie all the fucking time, I'd like to hear you guys go.
I honestly, like, listening to you talk about it, it kind of sounds like you fucking hate the movie. The intro to this movie is I remember the first time seeing it and being like, this is like automatically a classic. That song is so
brilliant.
It's so good.
All you need to know about the movie moving forward. If you don't like the intro, you are not going to like this film.
Yeah. All the humor in the movie is kind of contained in that song. And if you get a chuckle or a giggle or a laugh out of that, you'll like the rest of it.
Yes. And like, oh God, I love that song. It's so much.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so clever. But my most important note, like, I have a lot of notes for this movie. For our listeners, I also love this movie dearly. I would say probably not as much as you might. I did like end up taking a lot of notes, but the most important one that I have here is that Mos Def as Ford, I truly, like, in no way being hyperbolic, that may be one of the best casting choices in a comedy of all time. Fucking killed that role so hard. He like fits in so well with like that British humor for not being a British dude, you know?
One thing I can say, nobody dialed it in for this movie. Everyone brought their A game. Yasin Bey brought his A+ game.
Andrew is very right. Like, none of the cast seemed like they weren't into it. Like, everybody seemed like they were super into their roles. Even the people that were like doing the voices of the Vogons, like, they were so committed to sounding like these slimy, gross, bureaucratic fucking aliens. It was so good.
For a film that has like minimal practical special effects, the practical special effects that they have are top tier. Roast me the fuck out. Their lips and like the like sliminess of
Henson monster show props.
Those were Jim Henson. You mean Jim Henson, like Muppets?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I did not know that.
Well, it's like the Henson Monster Show, I think is what the company's calling it.
Yeah, that was a real delight.
I love it. Stephen Fry as the narrator, absolutely perfect.
Also very fitting for him.
Well, that's Douglas Adams' homies, right?
I didn't know that. But that's awesome.
Well, yeah, she said that in the trivia because Stephen Fry had the third Apple Mac. Right. Then she kind of put the cherry on. It was kind of an add-on. She cherried on top by saying, and yes, they were buddies.
It's very fitting because Stephen Fry leans heavily into atheism, or at the very least agnosticism. And Stephen Fry has been very vocal about those things over the years. So it's very fitting that he narrates something like that.
Oh, it's so good.
Picked a more like perfect narrator for a quote unquote guide.
I would have my GPS in his voice if I could. I just would like to note that yes, I think that personally Ford, he steals the show, like is involved in it, You know what I
agree.
mean? And he
Agreed.
holds to the character so truly in so many ways. I love his outfit. It's totally my jam.
Yeah.
You know, he's got the tie and the embroidered vest with the coat and everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just so good. And he just does such a phenomenal job. I think everyone was perfectly cast as well. John Malkovich, perfect fit for that role. Even
Yeah.
obviously, considering it was a new role addition, they still casted him perfectly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's always such a good creep. Always.
Yeah, really, really is.
Sam Rockwell is Zaphod.
Hey, excuse me. This guy boring you? Why don't you talk to me instead? I'm from a different planet. It's true. You want to see my spaceship?
There are so many like little things that I did that I've like picked up from him, like the come on now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like totally I got from him.
Just the way he switches back and forth between the two heads. Like, if I'm drinking when I'm watching that happen, it's coming out my nose.
All right, one of my favorite little lines that he does is when he's like, if there's anything more important than my ego on the ship, I want to call it and shot right now.
Yeah.
All right, come on now. And then right after that, you hear someone say, Zaphod's just this guy, you know?
Jason Schwartzman.
Right? I was going to say it looked like him. I didn't want to say it was for sure. All right, so fun fact is that is actually his therapist.
Oh my God.
Gag Hellfront.
But, like, I remember talking to me about this. You're the reason I ever watched this movie, Pash. You're the first one to introduce me to it.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, and I've only seen it like maybe 4, maybe 5 times. It's a great, fantastic movie. Obviously, I'm not on the level as you or Pat with it. Doesn't have as much of like the heavy like impact on like vernacular and stuff that it might have for you guys. I've only seen it about half a dozen times. So one of the things that I noticed this time watching it was how well the towel is carried through the entire.
Oh,
It's in like every scene, dude.
Yeah, Ford right in the opening scene, right when you're introduced to Ford and Arthur, he wipes beer off his face.
Time is an illusion. Lunchtime, doubly so.
doubly so.
And he's like wiping his face with the towel.
Every line from Ford,
I
especially in that scene.
Says to the bartenders about like putting a bag over their head.
Oh my
Should we
God.
lay down and put a bag over our heads or something?
Yeah,
If you'd like to. Will it help?
yeah.
Not really.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, all of his lines are so like everything, because even in that bar scene, the like I love the whole where he's chugging the beer. He's just like, sorry, eat the peanuts. You're gonna need the salt.
You're gonna need the salt.
And then like, he just goes like, who's he? She. You know what I mean? Because he's an alien and has no idea about like pronouns at all, which I thought was a nice touch. You know what I mean? In terms of a big message that Douglas Adams has in the book is kind of like a judge lest you be judged type vibe, right? So like you'll see that he leaves a lot of the don't judge a person type shit, you know what I mean?
Nice.
In there, and that's usually Ford is one of a big, I think, carrier of that weight.
Yes.
But I love the part where Arthur tells the story, and first off, again, Martin Freeman, perfect line there where he's just like, yeah, all these people at these parties are just a bunch of, drunken idiots. And she's like, what? And then the record stopped. I said, all these people are idiots. God. Just so many moments. It's just so perfect. But Ford has the, that does happen.
That does happen.
That does happen. And I love that line.
He doesn't give a shit about what Ford's talking about or what Arthur's talking about.
But you can tell he's definitely lost a one night stand or two to that line. You know what I mean? It's so good. I fell in love with the books first and then found the movie later, right?
Oh, okay.
So when I watched the movie like as a movie critic, there are beats that I'm like, okay, little shoe. I wasn't a big fan of the kind of way that they wanted to go with the romance kind of vibe. And there are certainly some parts of the movie where it's just kind of like, okay, get back to the fun stuff that we're going through kind of shit, right? Kind of cater to the whole film, we need to have some kind of love interest involved in a movie type shit, right?
Yeah. To be honest, I think like I'm usually like really not forgiving about stuff like that. Like I especially don't like a romance shoehorned into something that doesn't need it. But I think that like especially at the time that this came out, it's like '05, I think, right? I think they kind of did it to make it like a little bit more to make like the ideas that are contained in the movie a little bit more digestible for like a mass audience because it did have like a big cast, so they were
But that's
trying to
what I
get
mean
like
by shoehorned a little bit, because they pretty much said we have to put this in there so that it could be more digestible, even if it wouldn't normally fit in this kind of movie. It wouldn't be
yes.
necessary. And I think if that movie was made today, it wouldn't be there. And in the books, that love interest isn't there.
Yeah, it's non-existent. Yeah.
Now, granted, again, Douglas Adams probably like made that change because again, he's writing this for a movie script, right?
Right.
So he like these changes that he's putting in, I can understand if he's trying to experiment with condensing his material that has been done through multiple novels and radio shows and TV shows, to try and condense all of that into a movie. With his kind of mind, I can understand being a challenge. So I'm trying to be forgiving of it as a fan of his literary work, right? But if I just went into the movie blind, I can understand why people would be rating it lower as a critic just because of some of those beats, right?
Yes.
That would
Yeah,
be coming into play.
for sure.
So I'm trying to at least be unbiased in that regard and objective to its faults as that movie. But since I'm such a fan of what that movie did for me in my personal life, touched me right at that perfect place of when I was just like, needed dark humor to make light of the nonsense in the world and just laugh at everything not making sense. It really did well for that, and that's why I always latched onto it. And considering the movie was like, to me, this perfect amount, like combination of awesome movie actors that overall touched on all these literary works well enough, I would say, right? And a lot of the humor is very much there in terms of like all the funny moments that you laugh at, like those are all in the book. So like you're getting the book there. It's just some of those other things that I think might have been shoehorned.
I just discovered as we were getting on the call that Warwick Davis played Marvin
in the body, but
yeah, Alan Rickman did the voice, which is
Yeah.
big
Right.
sad because we love Alan Rickman.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
I actually didn't double check this, but did I hear the computer? Is that the Reno 911 guy?
Yes, that's absolutely him. That's the new boot goofing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's him.
New boot goofing.
Yeah, that's him.
Wow. I didn't even pick up on that.
I never thought about that until you said it, and then I immediately like heard the computer and saw his face. That's it.
Right?
And IMDb confirms that yes, you are correct.
That makes it so much better with some of those lines that the computer says. I mean, I love computer.
You know who Deep Thought was?
Yes, Helen Mirren. I love Helen Mirren.
Well, and that's one of those parts that, that's from the second book. And I like the transition that they made for the movie. In the book, it's not two kids who are like immortal kids, because obviously if you notice the gag in there is that like, they just have white hair, but they look the same. And I love when they transition and it's just like modern day football stadium style, like, "Woo, come on, get off the answer." You know what I mean?
42.
Yeah.
Like I know we kind of like said this already, but the casting for this movie is like they just got so many people. There's so many great little cameos, even though they just show up for like a minute of screen time or less. It's just so great that they had such a
Yeah.
The casting in this film is as good as any Marvel movie.
yes.
Oh, yeah. Well said. They have done a very good job with their cast. Oh, what's actually just a little fun fact? The director of Austin Powers petitioned and got this movie greenlit after Douglas Adams' death. I don't know what made me think about that right now, but that was awesome. You know what I mean?
I absolutely hate Austin Powers, but thank you, Austin Powers director, for having this get made.
It's okay. It's okay. I love Austin Powers. It's okay, Jay Roach. Okay, carry on. But yeah, so I know that normally we like try and have like the negatives kind of thing. My only negatives about it involves the love beats. There are several moments in the movie where in the books, if you're aware of a character named Agrajag is referenced in the movie several times, right? If you're aware of the book. He's the crab that gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also the bowl of petunias.
He's basically like this being that keeps being reincarnated, and his destiny is to like be killed by Arthur Dent over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's always like in the most obscure ways, like in the book of he was a rabbit that Arthur would inevitably kill to make a pouch for. You know what I mean? He got turned into a fanny pack, and then like, the crab he gets smashed on. That's why in the movie, the bowl of petunia says, "Oh no, not again."
How I can, like, just rewatching this movie, I'm just going to reiterate that now I can see why you also love Everything Everywhere so much. The improbability drive, and also hot dog fingers. That's all I got to say.
That movie, and I think when we do our episode on that, it's probably going to be a longer episode because I think there's going to be like a lot that we're going to have to say, but like a big part of Everything Everywhere All at Once, all of the media that is kind of in this vein, like anything, Adventure Time, Rick and Morty, Hitchhiker's Guide, the creators of that like clearly love that stuff and drew from so many different things. Like the improbability drive is like a big thing.
Daniels did name Hitchhiker's Guide in an interview as an influence.
Yeah, so very not surprised.
Which makes me so happy. But yeah, that was the moment, Andrea, in Everything Everywhere, where I was like, oh yeah, they tapped into the thing that really made Hitchhiker's Guide one of my favorite things, is that, level of improbability, of just randomness in the universe kind of vibe. And that whole concept is just so much fun to philosophize about for me. Definitely taps into it. Pat and I have always done the like bored. Yes.
I think on the
sofa. I know how you feel.
Our goodbye is from this movie. The way that me and Mike say goodbye is from this movie. It wasn't until like fucking the 30th rewatch of the movie or something like that, and I texted Mike, I was like, watch the scene where they drink the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster and watch when they part ways. Watch how they say goodbye. And he texted me back like 2 hours later. He was like, oh my God.
Such a subtle thing, and I love it. Yeah, it's so true.
How do they say goodbye? I don't remember.
If you make like that simple pointer finger gun, right, where you put your pointer finger out and your thumb up, and you put your hand horizontal, and you each touch each other and make a square. And then you just do a thumbs up.
It's so subtle. It almost feels like it wasn't even written into the script, and that like Sam Rockwell and Yasin Bey maybe like they were getting along on set, and that's how they were like greeting each other or something. That's what it seemed like to me.
I am going to have to check that out again.
Yeah, it's super subtle, and I love it. And it is just one of those, like, I see ya kind of things. You know what I mean? And I love their whole relationship. I love that they're related. I love when Ford comes back. He was hitting on that super tall girl. He comes back, and they're like, where were you? I was doing research. Oh, wow, they found us. Oh, blast it. I could go on plenty, obviously, as you can tell, because to me, there's so many references in it between the books and the movie that are so well done.
Yeah.
And it's super funny. It's a very funny movie. I mean, really going through the whole beat, because in the beginning of when Earth explodes, that whole like, dun, 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 dun. Now, first off, I will say that I have that rhythm memorized, so I definitely will do it with the movie whenever it happens. There's so much to that movie that I just think is so almost perfectly humored, and again, kind of timeless in its own respect.
I agree. I think that it's timeless aside from the stuff that's shoehorned in. Again, this is the same thing with Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's dealing with an age-old question. It's dealing with a struggle that man has been having since we've started having philosophical ideas, or since we've been recording our philosophical ideas, and it's presented in a way that's funny. That gives it that lasting power.
Yeah.
Oh, but you know what? Just to actually finish off the note that I said before, my only note would have been I wish that they did more about Agrajag. And I should also say that even though the romance I feel like was shoehorned in, that does not take away from, and I can't remember the actress's name because I recognize her from other things. I still think she did a great job at, in her part. The romance being pushed in, it does not take away from her role at all. You know what I mean? For me personally,
they made all of the characters very much their own, very fleshed out.
Yes.
I agree. My biggest gripe with the movie is Arthur being massively insecure and kind of throwing that onto Trillian.
Yeah. Agreed.
He's just so grossly insecure. But even in that, he did it in his own way.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Andrea.
He was also struggling to move past that type of self. I mean, yeah, you're insecure, but like
like insecurities, hesitations, his weaknesses, and obviously that was his main character arc overcoming, because that's what he overcomes at the end. All right, well, we can go anywhere now. I don't need to have things, in that regard. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to have my home on Earth. I'm not trying to get back to this home. My home can be anywhere.
Some characters, when they're so insecure, they're very alienated. But he was not. He was still a very likable character, even with that, because of decisions that he made. Also, just another little note that I just noticed that I wrote down. When Arthur walks into everyone eating at the buffet at the end, the same song comes on that Matt Damon kills the board of CEO Dogma to. Do you remember the movie Dogma?
I do.
And how Matt Damon and Ben Affleck kill the board of CEOs?
Yes.
Shooting them a bunch. The song that's playing in the background of that scene is also playing in the background at the end, where everybody's stuffing their face with the buffet of stuff and they kind of drugged up.
What a fucking catch. When was the last time you watched Dogma that you were able to pick that up?
Probably sometime during the pandemic, I think.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Just to touch on the avoiding tropes thing, that's one reason why I really like the gun addition to the movie.
I really, really, really like that, and that's part of what I like about the female character and them avoiding a lot of tropes. Like, she is kind of manic pixie dream girl a little bit, which I know is kind of her Zooey Deschanel's MO in most of her characters. But I feel like it's a toned down version of it here, where it's much more relatable.
Yes.
When she gets the gun and starts shooting Zaphod with it.
Very vindicating.
It is. It really is. I feel like, oh man, if only we could really have that gun.
I'm just going to throw this out there because every time I watch it, I rewind this part like a million times because I think it's so well acted and they're such fucking goobers. My favorite part of the whole movie is the idea shovels and Zaphod, and they're like, Zaphod, what do you think? And he's like, the way he steps forward and puts his hand up and he's like, I think, bam! That shit kills me every time.
I loved how the shovels very specifically only hit you when you have an idea. Like, not when you're thinking, but when you have an idea. Martin, we haven't even talked about Martin really, other than to just say who he was.
The savior of the movie, basically.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
He was just really, I loved him.
Yeah, he's so good. And I always try to get a good screenshot of him sitting down at that sunset for a background. It's such a good desktop background.
That is good. That character is he's very antithetical to what Douglas Adams' point is in all of this. Again, kind of like in Everything Everywhere, where it's nothing matters, smiley face, or nothing matters, frowny face. Douglas Adams' whole point is nothing matters, smiley face, and Marvin is very much the opposite of that. He's the frowny face.
Not everybody's experience is going to be the same. Not everybody's going to react to that absurdity, and that they're not going to react to that in the same way. Some people, it's going to, that existential stuff freaks them out and fucking depresses them.
Yes.
Some people are just yay, I wish I could live forever so I could, Christ, no fucking thank you.
80 years is good. That's enough for me. Or however long I have to be here. Alan Rickman, I don't think of his voice as sounding depressing, but in that role, it works perfectly.
You can thank the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation for building robots with GPP.
What's GPP?
Genuine people personalities. I'm a personality prototype. You can tell, can't you?
I also love how Ford tries to block the laser with the towel when he comes up. When Ford and Arthur get brought onto the captain's ship, Zaphod rolls out horribly and hysterically, right? Yeah. And they put him up, and then Ford does that you know what I mean? And, and he throws up the towel in front it's gonna do something. I love him so much. Okay, obviously I wish that there could almost have been a follow-up or maybe a remake of it for people who are really interested, but I don't really know how rights like that would work and where the interest would lie. But
yeah, I don't know if they could follow that up.
But I wouldn't even, that's the thing. I wouldn't even really want them to. I feel like this movie just stands alone because of the level of practical effects they use. It lasts longer, right? The special effects that they use are high end where they are, where it's like even for 2005, you can be like, oh yeah, that's obviously CG, but it doesn't look, super like, there are levels between that and say Fifth Element, which also did amazing for its time period, but that was still in the 90s. So it's kind of one of those things where the movie just has a lasting thing visually speaking. Yo, I love how they were even able to get in touch with Slutty Bartfests, where they even talk about his like love for his shit with Norway, because that's referenced a couple times in the books.
That whole reveal of the world building and all of that.
We're kind of like dunking on the CG a little bit, but like, I don't know, that part looked pretty cool.
I wasn't dunking on the CG at all. No, I was saying, if anything, the CG still looks good, even if you were to look back at it saying it's 2005.
I misunderstood what you said. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, at least if my verbiage didn't express that earlier, right? Even if like other listeners were like, is he dunking on it? No. That's not what I'm trying to say. Yeah, and I love the whole like, just the concept of that doesn't make sense at all, of just like having one long ass line that somehow isn't being interrupted at all from the starting point, you know what I mean, of certain things, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just love how it all works. And then I love how he's just like, hey, like he's like checking out on the guys. He's just sitting there with a big ocean. He's like, yeah, we're filling up oceans. Just, 9 to 5.
The last thing I want to say is that I love when Zaphod first shows up in the flashback. And
oh my God.
The first time you see him, he has a fucking kazoo. I so badly just want to believe.
But yeah, it is like the kazoo party blower where it's like,
yeah, I so badly just want to believe that was Sam Rockwell's idea, and that he was just like, I'm going to have a kazoo in this scene. And the director was like, yeah, you are Sam Rockwell, because that dude is so funny.
He definitely plays a wacky role really well.
I think that dude has a lot of range, and actually one of the movies that I have in the roulette is a movie called Moon. It's a single person cast. It's like very serious, and he carries the whole movie. It's amazing.
I feel a payback movie coming already.
It's good. It's good.
This is why this movie to me was also a palate cleanser from the previous week, right? So like watching something that is so, for me, just like so. I watched it twice since we last spoke. Fucking love this movie so much. Unlike Everything Everywhere All at Once, I can watch Hitchhiker's Guide more consistently because I do tear up every time I even see a reaction video.
That movie is considerably more taxing,
like,
emotionally. Like, that's something that Hitchhiker's Guide doesn't do. That, like, obviously it wasn't that type of movie, but like,
correct.
Everything Everywhere All at Once very intentionally goes for the throat of your emotion, and it's like very effective in that.
So for me, this movie, since it has those elements in there, but this is obviously, probably the originator of them, obviously, and it's way more rewatchable for me because of that. It's all humor based. There's very, the times of sadness aren't like really sadness. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I really wish that they could have done was the whole man in the universe who made all the decisions. That's all. Because that's something that Zaphod is actually after, is to get to that position of power, essentially, right? That's why he became president. That's why he chopped his brain in half. It's a whole long story. But the whole reason why he has 2 heads, or like actually in the books it's 3. But anyway, the whole division of his brain part has to do with getting to that person. There's a part of me that wished that they could have tried to fit that in, or allude to it, you know what I mean? Because technically it is like, part of Zaphod's character in the movie already. They reference it at the very least. I mean, they do reference it, but they don't like, again, allude to who the person was or where they are or whatever.
Or what
you know what I mean?
Yeah, like what the importance of that character even is, or
exactly. And the reason why it just conflicts me is because the movie took up some things from the second book and third book, right, while also even ending the movie going to the restaurant at the end of the universe, which is the second book. And I feel like, well, if you're going to reference the movies that much or go that far, then why didn't we get a little bit more of those farther?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The first 3 books are the main works that people reference, because the last 2 books, Douglas Adams even admitted, like, he felt forced to write, kind of thing.
Okay.
I think there might have been a publishing shenanigans involved, kind of vibe. That's why there's also kind of like a bleaker ending in the books at the end of the 5th book. Most of the proper material that most people would love or reference or whatever is mainly in the first 3.
I think anytime you move a book and turn it into a movie, there's like so much that you lose.
No, I totally agree. And I should also probably give, listeners a heads up that anytime that there's a book adaptation, if I have read the original source material, I will be doing the same kind of thing. I usually am kind of a little bit of a purist, and I like having great references or proper shenanigans. If you're like, again, if you're gonna do it because there's a fandom to it, then you got to appease to the fandom, not just try and get new people to buy your stuff kind of shit. At least that's my artistic opinion, right?
If there's source material, why not follow it? Like, for the most part.
But I agree with Pat wholeheartedly that overall, this is a phenomenal adaptation of the book series.
Yeah.
And it's why I love watching it so much, because since it does touch on things throughout the books, I get to almost feel like they're referencing multiple beats from throughout my favorite series, right?
I think that probably brings us to our pineapples. Andrew, would you like to give your pineapple review first?
Yeah, I'll give it a solid 8. Honestly, I don't have super negative notes or anything. It's just I like it. I enjoy it when I'm watching it. I'm totally in and I'm laughing, but it's not like my ultimate favorite movie of all time. Super rewatchable, totally recommendable.
8's good amount of pineapples for any movie. I will give it a 10 only because I think when I first saw it, it was a good time in my life to take in something like this. On top of it already being a very good movie, it just has a lot of sentimental value for me.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that time. So I give it a 10 for emotional reasons.
That's valid.
Yeah. So I hate to, talk about all of how much I love it and then not give it a 10, right? I'm pretty sure that I've already made it clear that I'm pretty objective when it comes down to the ratings. I try to be, right? If I have a favorite movie of all time like this, and this should be known since this obviously is really my favorite movie of all time outside of some other ones in that respect, I do not consider my bias of it to really judge the overall criticism of it, right? So my fandom is the 10 out of 10 one, right? Yeah. Hands down. I will always recommend this film. I will always speak highly of it. And, I do think everyone should watch it, especially if you're a fan of the books and if you want to have a lead into either the, literary works or this movie or any of Douglas Adams' works at all, then, go have at it. But then the critic in me, of course, is going to, my final standing has to not be my biased one, but I'm going to have to give it an 8 out of 10 as well, like Andrea.
Oh,
you heard it here,
the
folks.
Romance.
2 out of 10 pineapples from Mike.
Well, what a twist.
Hey, before we sign off, this is our 3rd week of the month, which means that next week is our roulette week. We're going to pick a name out of a hat here now. There's 260 movies in the hat, so we don't know what the hell it's going to be.
There's a very small chance for every movie.
So the improbability drive is going live now. And what did we get? Let's see. We got...
Please be something that is okay.
Juno.
Oh, I have not seen this.
Me either, actually.
So long.
Wait, hold on, wait. Was that a pause? Hold on. Did you say that you haven't seen this, or that you haven't seen this long pause in so long?
I have not seen it, and I've been meaning to see it.
Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. Oh, this is exciting. So neither of you guys have seen this movie?
No.
Yes.
Have you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100 times. I love this movie.
Juno. Okay. And this is right a part of that super bad period.
Yes. Yeah.
So, all those actors and actresses that we know and love from that period are pretty much in it or making cameos.
Yep. Oh, fun.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
With that, thanks for listening to us rant about a movie. I'm Pat.
Andrea.
And I'm Mike. And I'll see you next week for another pineapple.